Should we go ahead and get started and let folks welcome everyone? I love seeing some familiar faces. It's great to see you all. We're very excited. Timothy and I are going to take a couple minutes to introduce ourselves really briefly before we let Steve speak about himself. I know we all, if whatever you want to share, and then get started with chatting about all things. So my name is Erika Torres. I'm a psychologist in California, and I also have been in the tech world, working in clinical program and product development. And I have a passion for ACT, and actually my good friend Sarah Risby, who's here, introduced me to ACT many, many years ago, and it really saved my life in many ways and has been the thing that I practicing as a clinician and, just day-to-day ACT interventions for myself as well. And my passion for tech has evolved over the last several years. And when I found out there was an ACT and tech special interest group through ACBS, I had to join. And so I've been a member for many years now. And over the last several years, I've led the group with a number of different folks. In this iteration, my co-leader here is Timothy, who I will, pass the baton to. He and I are going to co-host and co-facilitate discussions. So bear with us as we're also trying to navigate, I think, somewhat new Zoom interface here. So without further ado, Timothy, would you like to say a few words? Thank you all for being here. It's great to see you all.
You're going to have to unmute, Timothy.
Oh, no, Timothy. Is there some sound thing?
Oh, yeah, there's a sound thing.
Okay.
There it is.
Me? Okay. A tech problem.
So,
hi, everybody. My name is Timothée Basson. As you may hear in my accent, not English. English is not my mother tongue. I'm French. I'm a French psychologist. I work in southwest of France, and yeah, I was in a past life. I was an engineer, so I have a big interest in tech, and I joined the SIG.
I accidentally muted you.
Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. Good. I joined the SIG this year, so I'm a newborn in this active tech SIG, but I'm really excited.
That wasn't me. I think that was on your end, Timothy. We can't hear you again.
Okay.
There, better.
Is it better?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yes, I'm trained in ACT. I use it every day in my practice. I have a private practice in a small city in the southwest of France, and yeah, since the beginning of my practice, I'm thinking about how tech can be an ally, a support in the people we serve. So yes, I'm really excited to of the gathering together and to have you, Steve, today to talk about yeah, tech and ACT
And anything else.
and anything else. Yeah.
That's great. Awesome. Thank you. Would you like to take over, Steve?
Well, sure. I'm going to just say I wanted to do this for the SIG because it's a very important SIG and it's just growing and it's young and there's a lot of enthusiasm here. But I think it's very important because we all can look forward and see the world is changing very, very rapidly. And that if we really do care about human beings on the planet, we're going to have to figure out a way to be part of the changes that are happening and have them be something that we are on top of instead of it's on top of us. And I think active is better than passive, and thoughtful is better than impulsive. And how does what's happening in the world open up possibilities for transformational change, of really being able to do a better job of doing what the ACBS motto is, which is creating a behavioral science more adequate to the challenge of the human condition. It may take us 500 years, but it's still a great aspiration, isn't it? So tech and tech changes and AI and all the rest. So you don't need to limit your questions to that. I do hope that everybody who's just kind of stopping in, if you're not a member of the SIG, that you become a member of the SIG and become active in it. You have good leadership, good ideas. This, I think, was a good idea. It looks like we've drawn a nice crowd and get some attention for the SIG. So I'm not an expert really in tech at all. I'm just trying to understand as best I can how to use some of these tools. And I've been doing it for a long time in small ways, and more lately. But so I don't come with a blanket of expertise around me, only questions and involvement. But also, if you don't have questions about tech, but it's anything having to do with ACT, psychological flexibility, process-based therapy, what's happening in the world, ACBS, this is a good time for that too. I don't think we have to be restricted. This is a playground, and we're free to play in any way. So it said, ask me anything. So I'm not going to hold forth. I'm going to wait for you to ask me something. And I think the plan is to try to do it through the chat stream because of the complication of on and off with, but maybe the organizers can speak to that.
Yeah, I think we can definitely use the chat, and if the spirit moves you, definitely raise your hand and unmute and speak up. And then if it gets convoluted, we can certainly manage and speak to that as we go. I did want to kick us off with perhaps low-hanging fruits on some of the more obvious ways in which ACT can be utilized via the use of technology. And I know you're working on PsychFlex as sort of a product, a solution, an opportunity to do that. And so I personally would love to know more beyond the website and just directly from the source. And then maybe that will elicit some other discussion. And of course, folks are welcome to ask various questions, whether they're specific to tech or not. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that question. I've worked on PsychFlex and MindGraph for about 4 years. I put something out on the list so people could understand how it happened. A billionaire showed up, said, I want you to help me with logistics workers. I'm working with minority-owned logistic companies, starting them and spinning them off. And I want to do good in the world. And he had a history of doing good in the world. And I believed him, and I still do. I think he's a very good person. And I said, well, I will help you. I think psychological flexibility can be useful to people who are creating companies to be, FedEx truck companies. You may not know, but these big companies create many little companies that they don't own, but they then give the jobs to, and they put their things on the side of the trucks. That way they have no responsibility. It's all good for them. They make a lot of money, and small business people work their tushies off to try to make it work. And when it does, it's great. And when it doesn't, it's horrible. And it's piecework. It's one of the most difficult jobs in the world because you have all these packages that have to be delivered immediately. And, they literally are not taking bathroom breaks. They're like running. Have you ever seen some of these delivery drivers? The ones who own the company are just stressed to the max. So I said, okay, I'll help. But I said, if I'm going to do that, really what I want to know is, could you help me? Is I want to know, how can we help people in many situations like that? Whether you're a policeman or in the military, or you are, this is coming up on COVID, not very far away, but, first responders. Could we figure out a way to do something? And the vision was to have an app that the company would say, here's your app. And they have to do things like, oh, this will go on too long. If I tell the story, I'll shorten it. Things like I checked my tires are blown up, things like that. They have to do all these things. And then they drive off. Well, but then they could also maybe get something like, you have to take a package back to a customer. You delivered the wrong one, and they're probably going to be mad. Before you walk in there, do you want to do a little 30-second mindfulness exercise? You see the idea? We have the app that you use to run your day, and right in it, it's giving tiny little nudges and bumps that would maybe humanize the workplace. But I said, what I really want to do, my friend, is I don't want to just do that and show that it's helpful. I want the data on how to help individuals, because everyone's different. And this is early on in the process-based therapy thing, before we realized how much that's true. Oh my God. So I said, how about if we also ask them how they're doing every little while? And we'll model them as individuals and know what's especially helpful for them. Well, if you're hearing in the background, you know how YouTube works, or you should, because big data is modeling people, but I want to model people as individuals, and we have some ideas about how to do that. But I said, but the data can't be just owned by the company. I don't trust you guys. I don't care. You're very trustworthy, but here's what you're going to do. If you're big enough, you're going to sell the data to Google or Apple. And guess what they're going to do? They're going to sell it to big pharma. And guess what they're going to do? They're going to take the indications of suffering and yet more medications that are going to be poured down the gullets of human beings around the world. Is this what we need? No. So I became president of a charitable organization, Institute for Better Health. And the vision was to create MindGrapher. Why? Because I thought if you had enough data de-identified, we'd be able to figure out what are the processes that lead to change and how to nudge and bump it. And that would allow practitioners to, have a help of knowing how then to help that person and then that person who's different. So it's not one size fits all act. Here's the protocol, read the whole thing. It's more like, here's what you need. So that was the vision. It took me 2 years to put it together. And then the billionaire went poof. I've been involved with 4 billionaires in my life. Every single one of them gone poof. They just go. Why? Because they can. They can do anything. And something comes along and they change what they want to do. So my billionaire went poof. And then a miracle happened. And Gijs Janssen stepped forward, who had helped 25 years ago. He said this publicly. He had a panic disorder, came to an ACT workshop. He's best known person in the Netherlands, probably doing ACT kind of work. And he said, here's an app I developed. I'll give it to you for free. Put it in English. It's only in Dutch. So I said, well, that's interesting. So that's how it happened. PsychFlex is there really for MindGrapher. MindGrapher is there really for the data. The data are there really to kill the DSM and figure out how to help people one at a time. Or one couple at a time. I don't mean one at a time. I mean personalized and particularized. This person, I mean what you do in clinically, this family, this couple, this person, not some category. And science has really harmed the world by, people have this disorder. Oh, what the heck is, 250,000 different ways to get PTSD. What does that mean? So there we are. And that's what we created. But what I'm really excited about is that this thing seems to be getting some momentum, and we're talking to bigger people, and it might actually happen. It might. I'm working, I don't know, 40, 50 hours a week on it. For free, by the way. I've not made a nickel from it. If PsychFlex became incredible, then maybe it'll start putting money this way instead of money that way. MindGrapher never will, because it's charitable. And I give money to the charity. I'll never take a nickel from that charity, nor will anybody else, other than people doing staff work and stuff. So that's the vision. Sorry for holding forth so long, but it is a context for my deep involvement now of tech, other than my deep involvement now of the stats that allow you to actually understand individuals and target their individual needs. I spent a lot of time on that. Like, whoo. This is not granddad's stats, man. It's totally different. Or grandma's either. Sorry for the sexist example. This is not the old stuff. This is very cutting edge. And only AI can keep up with some of what we're going to be doing. And so we're using AI tools inside MindGrapher to help target and know how to help individuals. My answers hopefully will be shorter than that. That's
We'll
the
adapt.
long one.
It's to kick us off. I mean, there's so much juiciness there. I did get a question that was not specifically to tech, and I'm trying to digest. It's a complex question, so I'm working on that. Just know if I'm like trying to stare over here. Are there any other questions or anything that was sprung out of this conversation? I think I see Juan coming off here.
Yeah, I had a question. I was gonna type it, but I think it's easier if I just ask. So I'm a BCBA. I'm down in Miami. I do work though for a state agency that supports all other state agencies, and there's a strong need right now to do something to support staff, to increase retention and to support burnout, adverse effects of burnout, secondary traumatic stress. And so just I'm a BCBA, I'm the only BCBA on the team, and I'm the only one on the team that really is aware of ACT. So I'm trying, one thing is getting people to understand, how our approach towards these things, and that's one hurdle. Then the other piece is also, how do we get this out? So how can tech, for example, there's talks, do we create toolkits that all staff in this state can it is part of their onboard training, right? And because my thing is, if we increase the psychological flexibility of the staff, then that can be almost an inoculation, just like coming in and supporting them throughout in professional development and things like that. There's many articles that support how psychological flexibility helps in nursing and all these other fields since at least 2020 that it ramped up after COVID. I'm just wondering if I've seen some articles with using apps, but not necessarily like trainings for staff that I haven't seen. And how would it be possible to create a training curriculum, a brief training curriculum for all staff in state agencies that can take, and how can technology be leveraged in that way?
Yeah, well, we already got comfortable with COVID of doing online courses, for example, and trying to figure out a way to make them interactive and evaluate whether or not they're really helpful. And we do know that they can be. You just look at the data on internet versions and so forth. No, they're not as powerful as human to human, but they can be helpful. But the UX UI has to be good, and engagement has to be good, and it's very easy for it not to be. One of the things that I think the whole idionomic trend, the process-based therapy trend, opens up is the possibility of a hybrid model where, and I'm doing this with an agency, a federal agency, I think it's okay to say it. I mean, they deal with nuclear security around the world, all right? And a big agency have much the same kind of problem. And a lot of the workers there are on the spectrum. They're very able tech-wise, but they are not necessarily socially comfortable. They're in their computer world. And but everybody's an individual. So the way that I've been trying to think about it is what if we had something like the Mindful and Effective Employee, Paul Flaxman, Frank Bond's original thing, all the way back to Bond and Bunce 2000, one of the first randomized trials of the modern era, when ACT sort of came out after the 20 years of development with the 1999 book. And what that did was target psychological flexibility for workers with workshops. 4-4-1-1, I think it was a 4-hour workshop, and then another one next week, and then I think a month later a little follow-up, and 2 months later another follow-up, and it works really well. Yeah, but everybody who's run groups, everybody who's done this knows that individuals in the group don't always respond the same way. So where I'm going with the work that I'm doing around this exact thing is, I get in front of a camera and shoot little workshop-y things, almost everybody I'm looking at knows how to do this. You do this with your clients. You probably do it with your agencies and your clinic or whatever. You have that kind of skill. But then also ask people to give me some high density longitudinal data, and then take the little nudges and bumps that people played around with Cycflex are useful, are useful, and target the individuals in the workshops based on the response in terms of the processes of change that they're learning. And so, you know, we're going to do 2 projects, both of them kind of tiny little randomized trials, tiny, and see if that's helpful. So, you know, if you happen to have a Cycflex license, you can share it with as many people as you want for free. So if you yourself wanted to do this for a whole agency and even do a randomized trial or whatever, you could do it with 1 license. Just share what you think is important, shoot the workshop yourself in front of an iPhone. It's not very hard to do. Flip it around, hook it into, you know, but not very bad. You know, get the lighting right. It's not hard. So almost everybody I'm looking at could do what I'm saying, you yourself. And one of the things about, I don't want to just be singing the praises of Cycflex because it sounds commercial, but you can upload your own content so that you don't need permission. You just upload it and share it. Nobody else can see it except you. So it's a tool. And it's very, very slick. And so, I don't know, we're going to put some of this stuff in the Cycflex app, but anybody listening to me, if you don't want to deal with Cycflex, you can do this literally with emails and some of the EMA apps that are out there. It doesn't require, I mean, you can do it for very low cost. One size fits all workshops are probably better than not doing a workshop at all. One of the things also I want to say just on the psychological flexibility for organizations, do look at the data that came out later, not the first one, showing that flexible workers only prosper when they have flexible workplaces. The environment matters. Behavior analysts would understand this. So thinking that you can solve an organization that's just a train wreck in terms of its flexibility and freedom to do new and innovative things to create value for the people that are served, that you're going to do that by just getting psychologically flexible workers? No, you're not, because if you punish people for stepping forward and do something that's out of the box and effective, they don't have a place to deploy their skills. So flexible workplaces plus flexible workers equals effective workplaces that have happier and more effective workers. That's just a formula that's proven in the organizational literature.
I was gonna say that I was gonna add flexible leadership too, because sometimes the leadership will be too rigid in their thinking and not want to look within. And
so start there and maybe even get them involved in such a workshop.
Yeah.
You know, and we've tried to enter into medical schools with some of this stuff. For example, we did a pretty good job here with tech, you know, with online things and so forth. We've done it here at UNR. We started with the dean and the professors of the medical school 10 years ago. And I say we, that includes Ramona Humanfar, you may know as a behavior analyst, an organizational behavior management type. And when that happened, when the professors and the administrators started feeling as though they could carry the load more lightly, then it was really easy to get it into the curriculum and train physicians in training. And that's true right now. UNR, everybody takes 2 classes on ACT if you want to be a physician. It's required. And it includes some of the tech stuff that Ramona's developed with her team.
Thank you.
That's cool. Start there. See if we can get the head of the agency to be.
Yeah.
Steve, another question from Pierre Emmanuel. So I think it has to do with the data, and I would say, how do you build an AA for good? So he says, he asks, how many individual profile were recorded in your database, and what are the first awesome AI finding did you find?
Yeah, the answer is none yet, because we dump the data each night. Why do we do that? Because we're not ready. Why are we not ready? Because, well, we have a scientific advisory panel that's really walking through how to de-identify everything so thoroughly that even an evil actor broke in and had the whole freaking database, they couldn't identify a single person. And that requires some thought, because you don't want to throw everything out that you may regret later and say, oh boy, I wish I had that. You know, I didn't record the person's language. Yeah, but if you know their language, you might be able to. Well, maybe if you don't put anything else but the language, maybe you see the problem, you know, because it doesn't take many things. Person who lives in your village, who happens to be a psychotherapist and, you know, is your age, we know it's Timothy. So, but things you would want to age, wouldn't you? Yeah, you probably would. So it's a challenge we haven't yet crossed. And the other reason is to have access to the data that's appropriate for scientists who are asking pro-social questions, but they don't get the data, they get to query the data. But it's filtered through a pro-social scientific group so that bad actors can't grab the data. You see why? Would Google want this data? Yes. Should they have it? No. Would Apple want it? Yes. Should they have it? No. Just go through the list. So we're chasing the grants that will allow us to have the full ability to query it properly, controlled by pro-social scientists who are walled off from any kind of financial interest or anything. So it's tricky. This is why it's taken 4 years to build the ecosystem. And I'm sure we'll make mistakes. I know we've made some mistakes, but we fixed them as we went. And it's been thoughtful. It may not be right, but that's the way we're handling it. Is the data right now only go to the practitioners. And when you leave the app or no longer using the app or whatever it is, they disappear. They're gone. They're not even saved at night, other than in something that only you could see. And even if we wanted to, we couldn't see it. Privacy by design. It's compartmentalized in such a way, as they say, it's like the same way that LastPass can't see your password. If you work with LastPass and you lost your password, good luck getting it back, because they don't know your password, and they never will, because if they did, they could be broken into. So it's like that. So the answer is nothing, but boy, we're doing the studies now where practitioners who wanting to do research using these tools and so forth, they can have the data. And they have the consent forms and stuff from their clients to do such a thing. So that's all good. But we will get to it. But the long-term vision is, and I think we'll get to it in 25. I hope.
Yeah, I think you're bringing a really good point about like the trade-offs between like how do we scale some of these interventions? How do we make sense of them while keeping in mind like ethical and privacy? You know, like there's just so many things. And I think it's just an ongoing. And then when you add AI and all these other interesting elements, it just makes it a lot more complicated to be able to do good work, scale, do the research, protect people's privacy, you know. It's
You know, and almost everybody with a financial interest has this fantasy of AI only will substitute human. I do believe in self-help. I've written self-help books. I do believe in that, but I don't want an AI Steve doing therapy with people, you know, plugged into the matrix or something. I mean, it's kind of a horrifying vision to me. What, you never leave the routine or something? Like
AI.
tubes? I mean, really? But in the background, you can see some of the AI companies going, oh, wow. You know, not only can we have the robots building the cars, we'll have the tech robots doing the therapy. Wait a minute. This is a human relationship. So there are people who are saying things like, you cannot model my voice. You cannot model my face. You cannot make an AI Steve who will do therapy in 24. You know, when he's dead, he's gone. Or, you know, or maybe you want that. Maybe you want a 200-year-old Mavis Sai. She's pretty awesome now. I don't know. But let's have a conversation and not just stumble into something culturally that we can't walk back. And that's going to be a tough conversation for the world, isn't it?
Yeah, I hope we do have these conversations. That's my concern, that we may not be having enough of them, or that conversations become so circular and we just kind of sort of theorize about the things and not really act on
One
them.
thing we're working on in Cyclex or something, and we'll see if it's far ahead from release, but if you wanted to add your voice, which there's lots of companies that will do this, just give it a sample and it'll be able to pass a call to your mother. I mean, oh, you'll fool people pretty close to you nowadays. The AI is getting that good. Do you actually want, if you're going to send a message to your client, let's say, here's a PDF. Well, maybe they don't want a PDF. Maybe they want to just listen to it. Would it be cool to have them listen to it in your voice and the way that you do therapy with them?
Mm.
It might be. And you might want that. This came from me, and you have heard me do these exercises in therapy multiple times. Here's a new one, and I think it will really help. And not have to sit down and spend the 5 or 10 minutes it would take to record it and save it and send it, even with all the ease of a Cyclex or something. So I think we will be putting our toe in the water in this. If you're not doing it already. I mean, I have a voice that is AI Steve. I do. I don't use it really, but the only time I use it is if I've done something and there's a glitch in the tape. I can go back and type in the words and it'll make me sound like there was no glitch. So I do it in Descript and some of the places where I put together online things.
So interesting. What are folks' reactions to some of this so far?
I'll open the chats too.
Yes. So there's Patrick, says he's a doc student in EdTech and work as a learning experience designer specializing in online and mobile learning. And he'd love to connect with more helping professional. To help design, deliver offering. Okay.
Yep. Well, you have a connection there. So if you read it, yeah, if that's you, Patrick's asking for some help. And Pierre was interested. All these years of Cyclex, actually, Cyclex has not even been going for a year. It's 4 years of development. It was released at the beginning of August, and Mindgrapher was not part of it until Cyber Monday. So we're only 6 months in. So we're still babies. And if you look at Mindgrapher, you'll see it. The UI UX is just not slick. If I showed you the back end right now and what's coming, your jaws would drop, because the R&D folks on the servers and stuff just are doing amazing things, but it'll take a while and money to get that in front of everybody.
And I see Faison's comments here. I know that they may not be able to speak. I think there's a large time difference, if I understand correctly. I think what you might be speaking to here is some of the challenges we have with the use of technology in a time where there's a lot of misinformation and deep fakes and just a lot of really sort of on the other side of the spectrum, just kind of terrifying, like acts of, I don't even know what to call them, just really horrible use of technology, not for good, but really to hurt and to cause disruption more so than we're already experiencing without it. So I think there is a real challenge there.
The whole culture obviously is going through a shock, and it's not just AI, but it's all the other things that are happening. Change is happening very, very, very fast. And everything from climate change to immigration to changes in economic policy, the knowledge spreading around the world, the impact of the internet. You can be anywhere, and basically, if you have the right connection, come to learn almost anything and sell and participate and be part of the world almost anywhere. I mean, this is an incredible world we've created, but it's awesome and it's awful. And we as human beings have to develop cultural and legal and practices to protect it. So the issue of fake news, we've gone back with a few things that we've been doing with AI. There's fun things to mention. I'll mention a kind of a scary one and then a positive one. A scary one maybe is that we've taught AI to argue in the style of anybody. So you want to hear Rachel Maddow talk about some policy, or maybe you want to hear, I don't know, Donald Trump hold forth. You know, we can actually generate transcripts that match all of the features of the actual samples. You curate it a little bit. Why would that be cool? Well, you can start digging into how fake news happens. You can actually start looking at what are the tools that are used by people who are trying to make arguments that are capturing, after all, millions of people. I mean, look around the world. I mean, there's a shift towards authoritarianism happening right now. Because when change happens really, really fast in the history of the world, that's one of the things people do. They look for some sort of authoritarian figure to save them from change. And boy, are we seeing it around the world, are we not? And you can't just sort of, well, we can actually model this and study it in the labs. I have a dissertation going on that's doing that. But we're doing fun things too. This is a sort of aside, is that what would Abraham Lincoln say, and how would they? And you can actually get historical figures, and it will meet all of the criteria that you apply to their speech. They're talking about, you know, Abraham Lincoln talking about abortion and stuff like that. So it's pretty fun as a way of thinking about what historical figures have done who are persuasive, and maybe what bad actors have done that's persuasive. An exciting one, I'm just flipping, AI. We've taught a large language learning model, not ChatGPT, another one, but a really good one, to recognize every single item on every single measure that ever was replicated as a mediator of outcomes with any psychotherapy for any mental health problem. And organize them and score them in terms of the extended evolutionary meta model. You can throw any item at it, and we're approaching the reliability of expert observers by curation, regression, almost there. And say, oh, this is an item that tests both emotion and cognition. It's mostly at the psychological level, but it has some social features to it. Okay, so you can categorize it. Next step. We've taken every single concept in psychology from the dictionary of psychology and had it generate positive and negative examples of that process and curated it until it does it really well. And then we've looked at every single one in terms of how it fits in with the EAM. Where does self-esteem fit and so forth? And we're still in process of curation, but it's getting better and better. Why would you care about that? Well, here's where it's going. If you believe in the value of idionomics, if you've followed anything having to do with ergodicity and what happens with assuming that bell curves predict the trajectory of people, but they don't and never will, because you can't meet its assumptions. And it's built into what? IQ testing, personality testing, psychometrics, gifted and talented, Army achievement tests, the DSM, the ICD, it's built into everything we're freaking doing. Randomized trials, mediation, it's all built in. Well, our vision is, why do we have to tell people things like, which are your values? And then it's coming out of the weird world, the Western educated industrials, rich, democratic, we'll see countries. How about you say it your way? You're working with a client, you're drilled into it. How would you say it? And we think we can get to the point where, and we're close, it'll say, this item is very, very similar to this other item that has been empirically validated, and it fits into the EAM exactly here. Well, then why wouldn't you use that item? Why do we have to take this white, rich culture and say to the world, it's only 12% of the population on the world, it's 96% of the research and 99% of the citations. This is the model of human beings. Bullshit. I just was on a meeting with Louis Bush, who's a native person, from First Nations person in Canada. And their model of values is completely different than yours if you're not a native person. Completely different. You should tell them that you have to, so the possibility of AI, of being able to really listen to our clients, even when we measure, model, help, is shocking. And it's like, wow, that'd be cool. You could tweak the the things you send that actually fit the language and goals of the person automatically, or measure it in ways that are idiographic and still know that it's evidence-based. Does this sound crazy?
That sounds great. Because, you know, I love that you said that for like so many reasons. And there was a question about like unintended consequences. And I think, you know, you get out what you put into the model, right? And so if the model is biased and it's shaped based on certain specific groups of folks and, you know, let it be white, rich males or whatever the case might be, that's what you're going to get. But if you train it with more diversity and inclusion in mind, then you might be able to get a different perspective that can create greater good and be a little bit more nuanced, more individualized, while also being able to scale it, which I think is the interesting. And it's more responsible, not just like the right thing to do, but responsible. So I love that.
You know, we are headed towards a time when maybe generalized intelligence is going to happen, and it could happen over the next couple of years. There's some pretty smart folks who say that. And does that create the Terminator risk of, you know, ending the world? It does. Yeah, it does. It does. But it also contains the possibility, managed properly by human beings, of incredible amount of prosperity for people. So psychological and physical. But so the unintended consequences come from these emergent properties that we're seeing. I mean, nobody knew the chat GPT moment. And there were some true believers that thought they would happen, but these are emergent. And it's kind of like what's in RFT, you know, that, yeah, you train your bidirectional combinatorial relations, but within a network, you start seeing entirely different things that are up at this level of organization that are hard even to model, measure, and talk about. And put that into a, you know, a 14 million node or billion node network or something. You almost can't even think about how to model it, measure it, find it. So we'll see. We'll see. One of the exciting things that is happening with AI, I think, is there's some really cool teams. A guy named Robert Johnson, who gave a talk to the PBT SIG, who's there in Sweden, who's using RFT to feed large language learning models and seeing some really interesting progress towards AGI. But everybody should be cautious. But you kind of know that the world's not going to wait. They're not. That cat is already out of the bag. And so I think we should be cautious, but be bold at the same time, if that's possible.
Yeah. And I'm aware of time. We have, oh, there's a question. Yes, Olga, please ask your question.
Yes, hi all. Hi, Steve. Thanks for your answers. And I have a question. I say that I'm in private practice and practice in ACT. I'm from Russia and live in Serbia now, just for the context. And my question is, since we're talking about AI, it's more like a virtual world, but how does body fits to that model, and maybe to the model you were talking about, the evolutional extended model? How do we include body in that? Because I think that evolutionary, it is very important to tap into this also dimension.
Well, you know, I mean, I've got all my little sensors right here, you know, how much AFib I'm doing, or the, you know, the VO2 values on my last walk, or, you know, how many steps I took it down on my own, you know. And what's happening, of course, is people are adding these things easily. You can with the health apps and so forth. Some of the sensors are even here, but you can have rings and so forth that add to them. So what is in my graph, for example, all the hooks to add the wearables are there. And what wearables would I want if I could put them in there? I'd want heart rate variability, the first thing I'd want. Why? Because I think there's some truth inside the vagal tone research. And I think, I mean, I'm not ready to completely drink the Kool-Aid of polyvagal theory, but there's things in there that are important. And we know that psychological flexibility processes interact with these processes. They produce them, they support them, but they also interact with them. Double-headed arrows, right? So, and metabolic flexibility. It's interesting, flexibility keeps showing up over and over again. We don't have sensors yet for up and down regulation of genes with epigenetics, but it's going to happen. Some of the lab tests are really cheap now. You can do methylation, not that much expense. It'll be on your wrist. Why would that matter? Well, meditate for 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, something ridiculous, and 3% of your genome has changed. Meditate once a day for 8 weeks, 11 to 12% of your genome has changed. No, the DNA is still there, but it's up and down regulated, and if it's not being read, and it's because that's how fast cells evolved to be systems for turning environment and behavior into biology. That's what they're there for. I mean, the majority of your genome is regulating the rest of the genome. That's what it's there for. And we're still discovering epigenetic problems. That's this methylation, never mind, stone bundling or whatever it is that you're interested in, non-monocoats. So I think we can hyperventilate a little bit about that. It doesn't mean we're in a full Lamarckian world, but we're definitely not in the genes made me do it evolutionary world. That's bullshit. That's gone. You can do full genomic analysis of 1 million people, and 725 loci are involved in your height, and it only explains 5% of the variance. Height. I mean, come on. Never mind depression or something. So let's find out. And it's going to emerge as a complex system. And AI is going to be necessary, because if I could spend all the time here showing what we're learning in the lab with idionomic analysis, with high density longitudinal data from MindGrapher, boy, and of course, psychological flexibility is the ox that's getting gored first. Why? Because we're doing it. And what data do you think we have? So, but if you think it doesn't apply to your measures of self-esteem or reappraisal, I'm sorry, friends. We're probably the best of the breed, but it is shocking how much it's individual and systemic. If you just think, oh, if I can help people be mindful, they'll do better. No, sometimes they're miserable because they're mindful. But
There's a reason we're not mindful. It's protected in some ways.
You can try it that way, and you can test that. You can say that it's a formative model in which all the elements have to be together, and there are mindfulness teachers who say that, but then be really specific, measure it, and show it. You can't just punt and say, if it doesn't work, it's not mindfulness. No. We don't allow concepts into psychology that are like that. Heads I win, tails you lose. No. So, and you look at some of the measures. We just did a thing with the mindfulness measures in terms of the EAM. There's entire measures that only touch attention and maybe one other thing. And then somebody else measure massively touches motivation, which is hardly ever touched, or work behavior. So it's a fruit nut seed mix out there, what we mean by mindfulness, right? Well, instead of trying to do it like, what's the true latent variable, this kind of psychometric purity thing, which is variability between people, could we look at instead and say, what are the elements that are most helpful in telling me how to be helpful to human beings? That's called treatment utility.
Mm-hmm.
One of my most cited articles, people consider it a classic, sorry for the self-praise and narcissism, but it's the treatment utility of assessment. 1980 something. All these years later, 40 years later, we still don't have it. Because I think we can't get it that way. You can't get it with normative stats. You have to get it with idionomic stats, because it doesn't tell you what to target. And you all know that. If somebody says, I've got a person who's got PTSD, and you say, well, what should I target? Depends.
Mm-hmm.
You get a person in front of you, then it's different. So let's use these tools not to homogenize people. And the way I usually say it is to create a world in which every voice matters. And if you're not measuring and modeling, you're not listening. The feared voice that says, if we measure and model, we're going to be told what to do, and the relationship will disappear, and clinicians will be under the thumb of that. It's just not real. It's not what happens, because when you know what is binding up a person, you're able to bring that therapeutic alliance and relationship into helping them. And if you misguess because you got normative theories in your head that tells you that everybody is helped by X, and it's not true, you can easily make mistakes with human beings. And the randomized trials won't show you that because it just turns human beings into error terms.
Mhm.
So that tech solution will be really helpful to us in allowing us to create a personalized precision psychology. And if you don't know the tradition of ACBS, if you're new to it, it came out of a really weird wing of behavioral psychology that had that as a vision. Idiographic, high density. Where did the principle of reinforcement come? A few animals, one at a time, measured carefully, over and over and over and over, and then you get a general principle. But you don't go in there and say, I know what your reinforcers are. No, you know that process is there in the system. You got to find out what consequences of importance are there for that person. That's the kind of principles that I think we're going to get out of where we're going with AI. Not something like, everybody likes M&Ms. No, everybody doesn't like M&Ms. Stop force feeding kids M&Ms or any consequence. Everybody likes praise. No, they don't. Pick anything. So we already have concepts in our psychology and in our tradition as ACBSers that we can humanize and put into the world with some of these RFT ideas, with language and cognition and emotion and sense of self and all these things that emerge, but personalized.
Mhm.
You are of interest to me. You are of interest to me. I'm speaking in the role of a therapist. And tech is helping me with that.
I love that. And I am aware that we have about 5 minutes, and I am trying really hard here to tie that question to the broader group. I'm also hoping we can end with some, I don't know, like on a lighter note, because it is kind of heavy. Like I just feel it, right? Like it's very exciting and interesting and new and so many opportunities. It's also kind of heavy and a little dark at times, right? Like the navigating. So I think if I, I may be doing a horrible job here, but that's okay. Trying to tie that question that was very unique to the broader group, which is more around like being so hyper connected, maybe like, sort of like that technology, we're so, I mean, it's with any kind of addiction, right? But technology being one thing that we might be kind of addicted to, or just have not a great relationship with, or whatever that might be. How, what are some tips or, suggestions for bringing mindfulness in an idiographic way, but also a generalistic way around like, not just a relationship with technology, but a relationship to that high. Maybe it's a high from whatever the high is from, because it could come from many different places, but that sort of like dopaminergic wheel that we all find ourselves in, regardless of what the thing that is causing it might be.
Do all of those things, and then he's still.
And I'm seeing the chat, but thoughts thoughts on that ramble while I look at the chat over here.
Well, I just want to say this dopaminergic kind of pop, one reason why attention spans are shortening. There's some decent data on that. And if you have kids, you may have even seen it. You might have saw a popular thing that says the average amount of time you spend on a YouTube video now is down to 47 seconds.
Oh, mm-hmm.
And if you watch your own behavior, you probably see this. It's getting shorter and shorter. So how in a world like that are we going to have meaningful conversations, meaningful relationships, create peace of mind, appreciate nature, know something
Be
about
present, right? Like, how can we even just be present? Like, start there,
Yeah. And I think it's a big question culturally worldwide. And I was just looking at the data yesterday and going, oh my goodness. It's something like 544 million or 344. I might be getting it off by that. Each year in mindfulness apps. $500 million.
Isn't that something?
Mindfulness apps. Well, so it says people are yearning for something beyond the cacophony and the jolt that comes, ting, ting, ting. And yeah. And I have to say also, they're looking to us, friends. They're looking to us. I mean, the wisdom teachers, the religious teachers, and so forth, every year it gets less, and every year the shrinks get more. Whether you like it or don't, but rising of the nuns, none of the above, and religion is the fastest religious group by far, by far. And you can just do the math and say when it's going to reach 50%. 20s already, 27% or something. And I'm not saying good, better, and different. I'm just saying that's different. I'm old enough to remember that's different. It was 5%. And everybody could say what religion they were. And yeah, there were a few atheists or something, but, and a lot of the none of the aboves are not atheists. They're something else. You don't have categories for it. Well, and am I singing a song that's bad? No, I'm just singing a song that's different. Modern culture is changing the needs of the human beings in it. And it's not by accident that mental health grows by 4% per year compounded. Chronic pain, 9% per year compounded. I mean, if you just start doing some things that we deal with, do you know what it means to compound 9% a year? You can do the math and say there's not enough gross national product to deal with chronic pain. You can actually do the math.
Mhm.
It's years that you could count on your fingers and toes. So, you know, we're in a different space. We're learning how to be whole and free with a history that's difficult and with bodies that start giving you pain. Hello, how old are you? If you know anything about bodily pain, be my age. I'm turning 76. Go on a walk with me, you know. And I'm out there, but you know, I'm just saying, we got to be part of the solution. The whole world is looking to us. That means finding a way to use these tools for good and got it on top of them before they get on top of us.
And maybe it just starts with us, right? Like, yes, many of us are providers here or clinicians, but you know, all of us are human. And so we can utilize these like sort of skills for ourselves and, you know, can we be present with ourselves? Can we start practicing psychological flexibility or whatever it is so that we can show up in the world a little bit better, like a better version of ourselves. And then, you know, hopefully we can also, if we are therapists, psychologists, seeing folks, we can bring that into the fold as well, right? And like chip at it slowly but surely.
Well, and an awesome place to do that is the ACBS ACTing.
Yes, thank you. I love it, Steve. You would think we'd like paid you or like prompted you to say something just at the right times. You know, you have good timing. Yes, that is one great way to do it. Do reach out to us, learn more about us. Our page is a little bit under construction. There's some changes and stuff we're going to add. But yeah, reach out. This is sort of like a 2024 kickoff to like what this SIG could be about. Like it's gone through different incarnations and iterations, and we want to make it whatever you need it to be. Like there is no group without you. So you tell us and we'll figure it out. And yes, there is a Slack group, Matt. It is not very active, but that might be part of the thing that we work towards bringing more activity to that Slack group, or ultimately, you know, deciding it's obsolete and moving on. Like that might be the assessment. But we do have a Slack group and we do have our listserv. So join, if you're a member of ACBS, you can join our SIG and reach out directly. I put in my email there. I didn't want to give out yours, Timothy, because it's not mine to give, but feel free to share if you want to.
Yeah, I will do so.
But yes, thank you all for being here. This was recorded and we're not really sure how and what way we might share this. We might put it up on the ACSIG website. We're TBD, no promises. Stay tuned and reach out. Gracias. Have a wonderful day and week. Bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye, everybody.
And actually, bye.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Bye.
I think if I turn it off, Timothy, everybody will be pushed off. So I'll go ahead and do that.
Okay, bye bye, Steve.
Well, okay. Take care, my friend.